Hey, everybody. This is Mike Cisneros, and I'm here with,
Layla Manheim.
and we wanted to do a recording today because in the recent history of our online community, of the Tableau community, there's been a lot of talk about design feedback and a lot of talk about design critique and about iterating on your vizzes based on what other people's feedback is. And what we have seen is that there's not a lot of guidelines around how to do that effectively or how to do it in a more specific or more formatted way. And the thing is that we have collaborated and we have critiqued each other's vizzes in the past in different ways than what we've seen going on online. And so we thought that the next time that we were going to collaborate on something or get feedback on something, it might be worth sharing our process with other people so that they can see how we do it. And maybe that would inform how they do it.
So I am, as you can hear, still getting over this TC bug, but I have been working on this viz because of TC. And so I thought this would be a great one for us to do the feedback in public, since I definitely was going to get some feedback on it from Mike anyways. So I will share it.
So before Layla shares this, I want to say that I have no idea what this viz is. I haven't seen it before. And Layla hasn't told me anything about like what it was. And the fact that it has anything to do with the Tableau conference, I just learned 20 seconds ago when she said it.
All right, you ready?
Yeah.
Okay. Has been a trouble of mine for since I first started trying to speak in public. I was just going to say.
It's going to happen.
Exactly.
So
when I started watching the video that Tableau so kindly recorded with my husband because he didn't get a chance to see it live, I noticed that it was of extremely high quality. So thank you for that, Tableau. And so I thought it was a great opportunity to do my first really quantified self-viz and really count the ums, but really also try to figure out how I'm using it and why I'm using it in different parts of my talk. And so this is counting the ums in the talk that I gave at conference. And I also, so I'll say I started out sketching this out on the airplane ride back, and I was very sure that I knew exactly how I would. So I did some initial, I did like 10 minutes of listening and counting the ums. And so that was kind of like a talk to my talk. It was my initial data exploration. I started seeing some themes in there of how I was using it. And so I felt good enough understanding the data to, really think about how I would do it. And so I really like the idea of music, like a musical score. That was kind of the initial idea. But I was going to have like a line for each of the types of ums. And there were just way too many ums, and they were all on top of each other. And so I kind of looked at the data, did a little more data exploration, and I happened to see Alberto Cairo tweet about Minard, a new book about Minard. And so I kind of relooked at that again. And so this is, you will probably spot, very inspired by Minard. Not the top part of his, like the main part of his chart, it's more like the bottom of his chart. So basically you can see going across is the actual time. And each one of these bars or lines going down is a slide. And it's going down is, so these grids are showing the time from the beginning of the slide. So this is, like this slide was 110 seconds. So you can see kind of how the pacing of each slide, you could see that I was surprised I knew I had some slides that I spent more time on, but you can really see like that I went, kind of pretty fast through some slides, and then slow down a lot, and that also tended to increase my ums. And then this is just, I did rate to kind of show, to kind of control for the different length of slides. So it's basically the number of ums divided by the total time of the slide.
Okay.
So you could see my first slide was the agenda slide. And thank you, Bridget, for the idea to add slides in, to add slide images. And I will say, exporting slide images from PowerPoint is super easy.
Mm-hmm.
Adding them in here was very labor intensive. So here's another vote for data-driven everything, like data-driven map backgrounds. But so you could see the rate and then the total number of ums in that slide and what the slide was about. And so for example, we can take this crowd favorite here, and you can also look on here and see kind of when each occurred.
Okay.
And over here, I also added just a cumulative Pareto of, because I wanted to see, was I using ums in more in the beginning or towards the end of slides? So you can kind of click on this and see I did a quarter of all my ums in the first 10 seconds of slides, and then you can highlight those particular ones. And finally, I will say I did some, doing these grid lines was just a totally different data set, actually, taking advantage of the transparent sheets. But what I really like about, that was one of the things I really liked about the Minard chart, is how you kind of have the grid start when there's a new record. So you can really easily spot when there's, kind of a new record of a longer slide.
So the grids are a sheet underneath the sheet with the dots on it.
Yeah, this chart is actually about 5 layered sheets.
Oh, okay.
So I don't know if you can spot it. One of the things that I found kind of just through detail formatting at the end that I really like, that I'll probably use a lot for transparent sheets, is the ability to kind of highlight. So if you're using a pretty light color, so for me, this color of the, I like doing the line chart here because I think it really like accentuates that shift in pacing.
Mm-hmm.
But I struggled between like making it the same color as the bars and having it the same emphasis, or maybe like making these bars like have less of an emphasis and have more of a visual emphasis on the line chart. But I decided I wanted to have the line chart be lighter. So if you have a pretty light color, it's kind of harder for it to stand out. So I made a copy of it that's colored white and just, a little bigger. So it's kind of like a shadow, but like a highlight shadow.
Uh-huh. Okay, well, let's start by talking about what specific things in this viz do you want to talk about as part of this?
So first of all, I guess I'm wondering just overall readability, because I know this is not a common chart form. There's some things in it that aren't common. So just kind of, and I kind of thought about adding some instructions maybe here, but then I like the idea that it's really open space. So I guess how easy or difficult is it to figure out how to read this?
Okay.
For you? Color choice, of course. Like I guess I went with the very I guess sparse red, and just red is one accent color. So just kind of seeing if that makes sense, if it's too much red. And I think I was really expecting you, honestly. to tell me what I should be thinking about. But I
Well,
know that's wrong. I should ask you. So this is
well,
kind of
no,
like, so I'll say
okay,
this is at my kind of like semi-final stage. If I
okay,
had to say between 0 and 100%, it's at like 75.
okay,
So I'm still open to some, if there's something wrong, obviously I want to know about it. But I want to kind of focus more on how can I accentuate what's already there, and how can I make the story kind of that's already there easier to
right,
understand.
right. Well, because this isn't really about what's wrong, because there's lots of different ways to get to whatever you're trying to achieve. But the purpose of talking about it with me is to figure out, like, for me to understand what actually it was you were trying to achieve with it, and then figure out if everything is working towards doing that.
Right.
So I guess one way to start is to figure out what what do you want the audience to get from looking at this? Like, what is the actual takeaway you want them to have?
Starting with the easy questions.
Uh-huh. Well, it's
Uh,
starting with, I need to understand what the actual, I mean, I understand why you would want to create a chart like that because it's interesting.
yeah.
It's quantitative self data. It's something you wanted to learn about yourself.
Right.
So, what have you learned about yourself? How are you trying to convey that to somebody else? And why is that message important to them? So, what would you think would be your objective along those lines for an audience?
Yeah. So what I didn't expect is I really I think pacing is a lot more important than I ever paid attention to.
Like
So
pacing as far as slides, as far as
yeah,
having
yeah,
no slide be longer, or like you have this
yeah,
305 slide later on,
yeah,
but most of them aren't that long.
yeah, exactly. And it seems like, so you'll see it's not, so like this slide um, is not, it's pretty long. It's one of the longest, but it doesn't, there's definitely great, pretty big intervals there where I'm not using
Mhm.
And so it's kind of like this combination. For me, it was a combination of, I figured out that I couldn't go too long without some sort of visual cue for myself of what I needed to talk about. It's really, so what I figured out is I thought I used to when I was kind of searching for words,
Okay.
but that wasn't really a common use. It was really when I was kind of trying to transition to a new topic within the same slide, or as you can see by it was in the beginning of a slide when I was kind of trying to set myself up and figure out what I needed to talk about. So for
It-
me, it was about I think the reason why I did this is I wanted to learn more the places where I use and so I could have more awareness when I talk to kind of watch out for those things. I don't know how much people are I think there are definitely other people that have an issue with using
sure.
and so hopefully they're interested in kind of where those land and what kind of patterns there might be that they could watch out for.
Okay, let's go back to when you were deciding how to construct this phase. Not in a technical sense, but in a design sense. Did you consider doing it in any other ways that you discarded, or was this the idea you had right off the bat? I mean, you said you wanted to do it like a music,
Yeah.
like a scale, and it does sort of look like that. But were there other attempts that you discarded along the way?
So I tried just doing, you know, when I saw that the data was very dense, I tried doing kind of just like Gantt timelines
Mm-hmm.
and maybe showing like the times that I wasn't using um,
Like, how long could you go without using it?
yeah, yeah. Initially, I had it like by looking at it by minute, maybe, or like just looking at it as like a one long timeline.
Mm-hmm.
And then I added, I added the slides to the like column so I just see kind of where they landed.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I noticed that there really was this kind of rhythm within each slide. So that's kind of what led me in that direction. So yeah, initially I wanted to have just instead of a line a horizontal grid line for each, like for each kind of bin of the length of the slide. I wanted to have a line for like so I looked at a few different things. I said maybe it's the position in the sentence, right? So did I use in the beginning or between sentences versus in the middle of sentences? So kind of have I don't know what it's called on a musical score, but whatever those vertical or horizontal lines are, having one of those lines for each. What is it?
The staff.
The staff, I think. So, like maybe having 4 or 5 different types of ums. So you could see along the whole timeline if I was using more ums in the beginning of the sentences or middle of sentences at certain points, and then having the slides be like the separators of each, like, I don't know the musical terms.
It's a measure.
Measure, thank you. See, this is why I have you around.
So,
and then I also thought of, I kind of analyzed, so I noticed that I used ums sometimes after a joke actually went well.
Right.
Like redirecting myself. It was like, it was great that it went well, but I had to kind of remind myself and get back to where I was, to my point. And then I used them, like I mentioned, like to find words
Sure.
or to kind of figure out how I wanted to end a sentence or how I wanted to transition to a new point. So I thought maybe those would be the rows of the musical score, but it was a lot of dots on top of each other, and there wasn't. I think once I put in the slide, like the slide points, it wasn't really apparent really quick that there was more of a pattern there, but I just thought maybe it's more, that would be a better way to look at it. And actually just thinking about the whole idea of that it was like really when if my planned message was like a journey path, I used ums more when I kind of deviated from the path and I had to find my way back. And so that's what made me think of taking a lot of inspiration from Minard's map.
Okay, so you have a lot of understanding of your own usage of ums. Like you thought that there was a rhythm to it. You were able to figure out what is causing you to use the ums more or less. You were even starting to subdivide them into different types of ums, but I guess you decided it wasn't worth it. That was more of a subjective thing.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that I understand how to get all that information from what you're presenting.
Yeah, I honestly decided to focus more on presenting the how often and when I used ums, and focusing also on the slide duration as kind of like the pace.
Okay.
Because I just wasn't sure that there were really distinct, consistent patterns. I did consider at a point, which actually was one of the things I was really excited to do, to have a timeline also of how I was feeling, and use emojis, cat emojis for obvious reasons.
Uh-huh.
But it really looked like a different viz. It was a challenge to incorporate that.
I can imagine that it would be, especially if you're using the aesthetic that you have created here, and then you want to add emojis to it. It would be entirely emoji focused.
Yeah,
we would only see the emojis.
Yeah.
And I don't think that is what you wanted to be your key message. Right. So, but this goes back to, what do you want the audience to take away from this?
One, that I use a lot of ums.
Okay, I mean that comes across,
and more so when I'm tired. So I do think what I like about this is that it becomes apparent is that towards the end, I'm using more and more ums, Um, even though I have like pretty short slides, not consistent, but it's I don't know. It in the rate perspective, it seems like I'm using more.
Yeah, although it's hard to tell because your slide lengths are all different.
Right.
I would say that what you are showing above the black line is different from what you're showing below the black line.
Yes.
The symbology is not all that different. Like I immediately see that there's a difference between what's above the line and what's below it. I know you have it labeled, but you have it labeled very small and vertically at the left.
Yeah.
And I can't tell if you have an axis on the top part or not. If it's all the way to the right, I can't see it just because of how presentation view is right now. Like I all the way to the right hand of your viz, you had to scroll so I could see the right hand side of it. But if there's no axis over
no,
there,
I don't have axis.
Okay. So you have an rate, but I don't know what that rate is, and I have no way of figuring it out. I guess unless I mouse over it.
Yeah, no, and that's one of the things I struggled is I don't know where to put the explanation of the rate. So I thought of doing, you know, I had a version where I had the rate is bigger and kind of like not vertical, is horizontal.
Yeah, I know you want to have those points there so that people can mouse over it and see what slide it is that you're talking about.
Yeah.
For that moment in time.
Yeah.
But if the takeaway you want people to have from this biz is that you are using more as you get more fatigued and later in the session, then you might want to represent it in a different way than on a per slide basis. I mean, this still have the dots in there. But what if it's a rolling average of per minute? What if it's, you know, just how your per minute is changing over time rather than rolling average, just the cumulative average? You might see it going up more smoothly because that is an easier way to figure out what you're saying. It's an easier way to see, oh, I'm using more and more. And then it's broken down by slide.
That's a good idea.
The bottom part.
But then you can't have the slide on there necessarily.
Oh, I think you can, but it would be two things overlaid on top of it.
Right. So a point for each slide still. That's
like I don't want to drive your design. I'm just thinking of ways to show what it is that you're trying to get across without losing the functionality that you want, which is to see, at this point in time, I've just transitioned to another slide. At this point in time, I've just transitioned to another slide. And then allow people to...
No, that's a great point.
So there can be a mark there.
I really wanted to be able to say rate per minute because I thought that would be easier to understand what it means without a lot of explanation.
Okay.
But I didn't... Not every slide is a full minute, so that makes that difficult. You know, so I think, it would really solve for that. And so doing something like, you know, a line chart or something with, you know, a dot still for every slide, I think that's good because it's still kind of separating and giving that visual of where there was a new slide. And then I would still be able to have my slide, you know.
Like your bottom chart, for instance, you have, it looks like it's discrete. Like you have a mark at whatever the timestamp was when the slide started, I guess. That's the vertical line. But all of those don't happen in that second.
Right. That's true.
They happen over
that's true.
the time it comes until the next slide starts.
Yeah.
So my instinct would be that this should look more like a wheat plot, you know, where the dots are slowly moving rightward and downward until the next slide comes.
Yeah.
But it doesn't
have I thought of that too, and especially with the longer slides, there's more of a space between them. So you could you have to really think and get a little used to reading a lot. But I really like the idea of one of the things I really liked is like if each slide, like I think it's like the presentation as a whole has a rhythm, but then each slide kind of has a rhythm. So I did like the idea of being able to compare across slides. That's kind of why I added the sort of being able to compare,
that's interesting. That part of it is.
Yeah.
Let's see.
And of course, throughout, I kept thinking, this is like narcissistic to the extreme. I can't believe I'm not sure why someone would want to look at this, to be honest. Other than I think it came out. I mean, I'm very happy with the look of it. I think I was able to get that kind of music-y feel, but still have it be like interesting to visually explore. And it's pretty abstract on, I guess, on the metaphor spectrum.
So, like, why the question of why would this be interesting to other people is because other people also have to talk in front of crowds, and other people also use ums. And whether it's in front of a crowd or not, when you're talking to people, we all have verbal crutches, and we all have these little things that we say that we wish we didn't say and we would like to eradicate from our vocabulary, but they just sit there and taunt us. And once you start hearing it, you can't stop hearing it.
Yeah.
And it's something that when you put out what your assessment of yourself is, like, it's, it's relatable. I think an audience does see that in themselves. So just because it's your data doesn't mean that people like wouldn't care about it. It's just part of being human. That's kind of what this can be about. Is it talks about what it is to be a person in the world, and this is part of being a person in the world. So
yes, dropping the mic wisdom.
I think that's if I switch gears into color, like before I talked about color choice, because that's more about mood. Like if you just sit back and you see what draws your eye first, it's the bars, because it's so much more solid color.
Bars at the top.
No, the bars at the right.
Oh. Okay.
Because there's a framing going on with the and the title, which is the subtitle, and your footer, which is a bold choice in and of itself, but it's more of a magazine poster layout than a standard biz layout, and I have no problem with that. I like it when there's unusual layouts like that, but you're boxing things in, and I think viewers' eye might get drawn to the bars on the right because it balances with the on the left, and then the footer and the black bar, and it's all the data that you care about the most is what is the least emphasized.
That's a good point. So I use that because I really wanted to be, I'm very, I think as you know, I like to have every color really really meaningful.
Yes.
And kind of like that echoing and consistency.
Yes, consistency and repetitive.
Yeah, and so I really used red here in almost every single place to mean except for maybe this M here. So like, the title, obviously it's about how I use these are the counts, and then each one of the red dots is the the within the slide. And so that's kind of why I made that red. But that is a good point. I wonder if I could, I wonder if I could just have them be red outline.
So what another suggestion, again, this is backseat driving, but what if your footer was actually the black bar that you use to separate the top from the bottom? Like, and you don't actually have a footer at all. Instead, you only have one bold horizontal line, which is also your title, which is also your design and data.
So I'm sorry, can you, you're saying make this black?
I'm saying use that in place of the black bar that you have that separates the upward rate marks and the downward
Oh,
direction marks. So it actually bisects your viz, because that helps to
okay.
differentiate the fact that the marks at the top mean something different than the marks at the bottom. Like,
Okay.
and it brings your title higher up in the viz so that people might see it
That's true.
sooner or more likely to see it,
Yeah.
but it's still not at the very top, because I know that's one of the things you're trying to avoid, is have it just be placed
Yeah.
at the top.
Okay.
It
But
might not work. It's just
no,
another
that
option.
might be good actually. But then, um, would you leave the? You think it's so? That's the other thing is I thought it was cool. Like I thought it looked pretty good when I just tried this sideways. But
You're
do you
right.
think I would
You're right. It does look cool.
think?
And I like that. I mean, I know you were lining it up, the
Yeah.
the descender of the U with the how do I use a favorite press
Yeah.
word, and it's just not aligned for some reason right now.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
But you're only 75% done, you said. So I mean,
Exactly.
the pixel perfect part is not.
So yeah, that was the other thing is well. So what do you think about? I mean, the three dots is definitely kind of like a. I think it's got a connotation, right?
Oh, it's important that those are there for.
Right.
I agree.
But do you think it's what do you think of having more dots, like so that it kind of lines it? It's as, or do you think the three dots is more of a kind of indicator of?
I think that that is a decision that you can make. I
Okay.
think three dots is enough, but that's almost purely aesthetic. For once you finish your layout, like, does it make sense? Is it balanced? Does it look right?
Right. Yeah,
Uh, and we don't know yet because you're not finished with your layout.
that's true. Well, actually, if I move this red to, if I put it up here, um, I would probably move this up, and so this third dot might actually line up a little better.
Yeah, or you might choose the last stroke of the M to line up with your horizontal line instead of the downstroke of the U.
Hmm. Oh, so like move it up.
Yeah,
Oh,
I don't know.
that's good. Some things to play around with.
Right, right. Um, if this is a flat file, can people understand it?
Um, I don't know, and that's that's one of the things we don't see eye to eye on. Like
You don't.
I I would like to. I guess my goal in what people can get out of it in a flat file is that they're curious enough to play with it. Like I really, especially I think with my um, public visits, I really um, I want people to not to kind of have to interact with it and play with it to get a lot of the story out of it. I know that's somewhat controversial.
No, we just don't have exactly the same opinions about it.
Yeah.
So
No, well, I mean, I think there a lot of people would share your opinion on it. I totally get. I can understand the argument for it.
mhm.
So I guess the question would be, can they understand enough of what this means?
or well, we can reshape it to, since it's yours, we can reshape it to, does it match a goal that you would have, which is it enough to draw people in to engage with it?
So I think I think it is. I think especially having moving moving this up um, and maybe even making it a little narrower so it'll make it a lot easier to see that this is based on my recent talk so that it's kind of like like not just general it's actually kind of analyzing a recent thing at Tableau conference.
Mhm.
I think that could help in
Yeah, and it's more acceptable to you, as it's more truthful.
Correct.
Well,
um,
as whatever it does, that I mean, because there needs to be a little bit more contrast between how you display the rate and how you display individual utterances in the bottom chart. I know you want them to be related. I know you want them to be similar, but I think they're a little too similar right now.
That makes sense. It'll definitely also bring the focus, the visual focus up more if it's a different. It'd actually be more of a match to Menard's chart. Because Menard has that. Well, I'll either do probably either a line chart or a area chart, but either way it'll be more of a, I think, like a solid red area. So that will also, yeah.
And that's actually a more important metric that you want people to grab onto, I would imagine, is the ums per minute, rather than to dig into the specific utterances.
Right. Well, so I think it's, see, this is why I love this, because it's really crystallizing for me, the important things for me. So it's hard to distill into like, this is why I want someone to look at this. But in terms of like the things that are important, it's the kind of rate of ums per minute, but it's also what were the ums earlier on or later on.
Yeah. So you learned about why you have stammer or say more in different times. You're not necessarily showing it in this viz, but you learned something from doing this analysis, which is good as well. You just learning that gives you the opportunity to maybe put annotations, or at least places where it could be annotated, in the bottom half of the chart. I know you don't want to clutter it.
Yeah.
Like that openness. So
you know what? So I'll say, I struggle with annotations placement, probably with everything. Like I definitely spend a good amount of time on the title. That always takes more time than I think. And if I ever have, legends or anything like that, that also is kind of, where do I put this?
Right.
But I usually find a good way that also makes a lot of like conceptual sense. Annotations, I don't know. I don't like the lines. I feel like I don't know. I feel like, well, because a lot of times it's like the annotation is for not one specific point, but maybe like a few, maybe like this much of a chunk of the data.
Well, conceptually, for a viz like yours, what I would say is you make like small like hover buttons that are just like a number 1 or a number 2 or a number 3, or even are just things that are obviously hoverable, and then you have a tooltip on that is your actual annotation. So it's not written onto your viz. It's just something that when you mouse over, an annotation pops up.
So when you mouse over one of these points?
Or you create an additional point, or you just draw, you have another worksheet that's just like a button, like, how when people put like the little like touch here to instructions on how to read, like you do a few of those. And those actually are where your annotations live. Like, they're hidden. You still have to mouse over them to see them, but it makes it less cluttered. But it also gives additional context to, around this point in time, like I was really struggling, and that's why there's a lot of ums here. Around this point in time, like I was actually really smooth, because right now what your attention gets drawn to in the bottom half is, it's wherever you've labeled.
Right.
I'm not sure why those are labeled, other than like it's the running longest slide, and that's what
exactly. Yeah, it was just to kind of. So I did think that was interesting, that just how it kind of get the longest slide record kept kind of. It wasn't until, I don't know, like 2/3 or a little more than half of the way through that I really had my last record of the longest slide. And I just thought it was and that's why I really added the line chart, is that, but also kind of like seeing how it speeds up and slows down. So I just thought that visually that really accentuated being able to see that I hit a new kind of longer point, and how much you can also compare kind of from the longest. So you see like the 2-minute one, it goes up about it. The next slide is quick as, you know, or fairly close to as quick as the transition from some of the other.
And this is why you have a line chart that connects the tops of all of these, is because you want to emphasize the long, short, long, short, long, short rhythm of your slides.
Yeah.
Because to me, at first glance, I wouldn't understand why that was essentially important, because I can see how long the slides were. You have a bar chart to show that. But if you really want to emphasize the up down, like, I understand that that's why you're including that. Now it's upside down.
What?
Now it's upside down.
Yeah. But it's kind of
going to be, because that's how you want to emphasize things in your slide. You want to have the rate be the thing that people look at.
Yeah, and it's kind of like how far, it's almost like the depth of the slide, in a sense.
How deep you get into that?
Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
Just out of curiosity, did you build your slide deck from the first slide to the end, or did you go about it in kind of a random way, or not random, but you know what I mean?
So I figured out the sections. Like, I knew I wanted to, start with like a definition of, what is metaphors, and I wanted to have a case study section, and I wanted to have like a design process. But then as I was building out each section, like, I didn't know initially that I would do a like example of how to apply the design process. That came actually from doing a dry run of the talk in front of some people. And so it made me realize like that I needed a more concrete explanation of how to actually do these things. But I built most of the slides for the sections from start to finish. But then as I did some dry runs of it, I definitely added more, took some stuff off to help with, like, I probably added a good 10% at least of the slides, like, as I actually wrote out the narration, and so I wrote out the narration kind of, and then I ran through the narration itself a few times, but then I kind of, whittled it down to like, what are the main points, but just so I knew kind of a most polished version of it, that I would have all like the visual content that I wanted.
Do you think there's any value in denoting anywhere in here where the sections, as you perceive them, of your talk are, where the breaks are between sections?
I thought of that at some point. Yeah, I wonder almost if I could do. I couldn't think of the ideal visual, I guess, visual way to do it that I was super happy with.
Right.
The only thing I could think of is maybe having the circle here, or the line be like a different color. But that might actually now I think about it, if I do a line chart or area chart for that top section, doing like reference lines might actually.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, was reference bands. If you were doing it in the bottom section, you can use reference bands.
And the interesting thing is a lot of the longer ones, well, actually, no, never mind. Some of the longer ones happen like right before the end of a section, or right at the beginning of a section.
That's what I was wondering about, because you do have those two, like at the 15-minute mark, and then I think at the around the 27-minute mark, you have those series of shorter slides in both times. And like I was wondering if that was the beginning or the end of what you would consider to be a section.
Yeah. Well, no. So then I was the really, really, just as I was adding the slides in here, that the really, really long ones are the ones that are like my explanation of what it is. And those were probably the least structured ones. So that's kind of what I was saying with like the not having a lot of visual cues is I kind of wrote to myself like, okay, I want to explain what the data was and like what the metaphor, generally what the metaphor was and what the, like, you know, what I focused on kind of. But it's where and I think those ones I struggled a lot too. Because those are ones where I really was thinking, okay, am I forgetting to say something that I wanted to say about?
But the count isn't really high. It's just
Yeah, not for that one. That one was okay. This one was a bit brutal.
okay.
I think. I don't know. It's like there's so, and I think definitely where you have sections where the ums like, you know, really congregate together, it feels like there's more ums when you're watching it. Because you're like, oh, yeah.
When you're watching it.
Yeah, exactly.
Your own.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So one thing that it's one of the struggles I have is like weird spaces. So for me, for here, one of those was here, but I think what we talked about will solve that. But then over here, so I thought of having some sort of, you know, like one of those arrows and just saying, yeah, a quarter of my happened in.
Oh, like having a text box or something pop up when you click on it?
Not even pop up, just like having a quick like call out annotation here that says, that explains like, you know, I did a 1/4% of my in the first 10 seconds and like an arrow, one of those arrow things. But then I thought it would kind of cheapen, it would not match my design. The design is so like, I don't know, like 20s minimalism almost. That having an arrow like that.
Not with the typeface you've chosen, but okay.
Well, okay, there you go, being so specific. Well, I mean, I think an arrow, like one of those, you know, kind of curved arrows does not really match the feel, I guess, of this.
No, I don't know that you need to fill that white space.
Okay. Leave the white space.
Okay. Yeah, okay. Because it makes it feel like the on the left is sort of bleeding over the edge, which is fine.
Okay.
I mean, it's fine to me. It doesn't seem like you need to put anything there just for the sake of putting something there.
Okay. So you think if I add some of those on the line chart of rate per second, if I add some labels for, you know, like I guess the record, or like, you know, the highest points of ums, that would help in making it kind of more understandable on a flat file. Yeah.
Well, I think that the labeling needs to be more focused on the ums and not on the length of the slides. That's the first thing.
So would you say these labels are not necessary?
I'm saying that they emphasize slide durations over the ums because there's no way to know. There's no way to know like that each dot represents a single like you have to figure that out on your own.
Well, yeah. You know, people can figure stuff out. Okay. That's awesome.
Yeah, but you're not drawing.
So I didn't know. So in your opinion, if I add some labels for ums or rate up here, is that enough of like, is adding that enough to return some of the emphasis to the ums, or do you think, and like I could keep these still, or do you think they're going to draw too much attention. So part of the reason why I did add those is because I thought it would be easier to read like what these lines mean.
And you're right. It is easier, especially because sometimes you refer to them as seconds, and
Yeah,
sometimes
I do need to. And when I was looking at it, I realized I need to change those seconds.
it really doesn't matter which way you go as long as they're the same.
Yeah, I really don't. I think 100. So that's the kind of mental work that I don't think people should need to do.
Yeah.
Like figuring out how many minutes and seconds is 190. Like I could figure it out, but it's much easier to be like, oh, 3 minutes and 5 seconds.
Well, that's consistency because your long timeline uses minute seconds. Your labels use minute seconds.
Yeah, exactly.
What is your opinion? We talked about leaving the white space. What is your opinion of embedding the viz there? Embedding the talk there?
Where? Oh, there?
Yeah. And that, because then every that you click on could jump to that spot in the talk.
Can you do that?
Yes.
So I haven't played around with that part of it. That would be.
It's just a flag that you add on to the end of the URL.
That's a possibility.
Hey, would you like to do a lot of extra work for because I got ideas.
Well, no more work than adding a background image for each slide.
Right.
So, but that's a possibility.
That makes it a lot more interactive.
That's true.
If it jumps to that specific spot in your talk.
If I want to put people through that pain, I guess. That would definitely increase my views. Although.
And that's what it's all about, man.
Exactly.
Bump them view counts up.
Exactly.
What's interesting though is that this is almost an ideal application of that. Not the bump your views up, but you actually have points, specific time points within your viz that you can link to a specific thing in a YouTube video that's already up.
Yeah. So if you do that, does it start playing it automatically from that point? Or does it just jump to that point and you still
I don't know if it can autoplay anymore. It might not autoplay anymore.
Because that's actually good. Like I would think it would be annoying. Well, I'm all for like giving the user like control.
Yeah.
Over what so to me I would almost rather that they have to hit.
It probably doesn't autoplay because I think it used to, and then YouTube changed the rules earlier this year because that's why a lot of the music stuff that we used to use YouTube for doesn't work anymore.
Okay.
So
as a user, if that was a like a what are they called, like a menu action, can you do that as a menu action?
It can just be a URL action.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think if it's
like on select.
Huh?
On select. It doesn't have to be on menu.
Okay.
I mean,
I guess because they're just hovering, so I could say like click to play.
Yeah.
Because I don't want it to be like, I want them to decide if they want to play it from there. Do you know what I mean? Like I don't want to just like randomly start playing every time they're.
Well, like Curtis used this in his quantified self viz about what if I were Kevin Durant. Like he had
I know that guy.
All of his vizzes were embedded, and then when you clicked on a certain shot, like it would lit up him taking that shot.
Okay. I'll think about it.
Yeah.
Depending how long it takes me to do all the other stuff and how much I want to get it out there. Well, cool. And anything else on color?
On color? I mean, red and black is a real strong combination.
And you'll notice that I broke my rule that I told you. Now, it's not the background, but that is a true black. Thought it was important here.
Yeah, you can't really get much stronger than
Yeah.
the white and black.
Yeah.
Um,
And if you're a Bauhaus lover, you'll definitely recognize my love for Bauhaus. I love, well, I look at their typography posters anyways a lot. Like, it's just one of the things I really like. I think you can learn more typography lessons every time you look at it.
uh-huh.
So that's actually a good Google image search as opposed to dashboards.
Yeah. Well, the palette that you chose, it works. It's fine with just one color, outside of black and white, with one, pigment. But like, red's aggressive. It's angry.
Yes.
I don't know how angry you are that you use a lot in your talks. But
yeah, I know.
maybe that's how you feel
pink,
about it.
which I do love pink, but yeah, I felt like it was the red and black is really just it's like instantly it looks really cool. It looks just really like kind of sharp and very poster like, I think. So
Yes, it does.
I think I did have one question. So I went back and forth between really loving the line chart and feeling like almost like it was cluttery and like it almost looked like a pencil, like how you have, if you have sketches, you can see, and if you used pencil but erased it, you can kind of see still where you erased it, like that kind of dirty or whatever. That I was worried that that's what it looked like. So I don't know, do you think that it adds?
The line chart is a matter of preference.
Okay.
Like, I understand why you have it in there. I don't think I would choose to have it there personally, but that is just a matter of preference. So, like, there's nothing wrong with it being there because it does what its job is. It emphasizes.
Exactly. I normally would agree with you. I normally would not do, lines and a line chart, but yeah, I really wanted to emphasize the up and down more than just with
might experiment a little bit with having a little more contrast between that and the staff lines. Your horizontal grid line. Because it looks like they're the same color.
Yeah. Okay.
Whether that's intentional or not, it might be intentional.
I want it to be similar, but like slightly different. So
maybe it needs a little bit of red included in, or pink, something.
Yeah. There you go. Excellent idea. All right.
Okay. Well, you think you're 75% done.
Mm-hmm. Maybe it was 65.
Well, you never know, because the point of having talks like this is to raise other questions and to clarify your thinking, and then you end up doing different things based on what we talked about. So
yeah,
and whatever you end up doing,
because I would have never, I wouldn't have thought to. I think partly you do get kind of committed to what you've done. I mean, I do tend to play around with it a lot, but I think definitely as you're getting to like the 75% done, there are things that you just wouldn't even think to flip around, maybe because you're too committed. So I would have not thought to move this like up here, but that is,
and you might not do that either. You might leave it where it is because it might not work. So
it might sound like a better idea than it is, but
yeah. But it's more like the further down the line you get with your designs, you can end up making little decisions that keep pushing you away from, or they sort of bake in assumptions that you're making that an audience wouldn't have, I guess.
Yeah.
like, because you fully understand what's in here, and the audience has no idea what's coming. Just like when you first showed it to me today, I didn't have any idea what was coming. Now I understand it, but I've been looking at it for an hour, and we usually don't have an hour to understand it. So.
And okay, so one last question. I guess we should have been the first question. Initially, when you looked at it, kind of how quickly could you figure out what it was about? And I don't know if did it take longer to figure out how to read it?
I guess what it was about because of your title.
Okay.
Because the big letter forms on the left, like, I immediately knew what it was about. Then it was deciphering what the encoding was, and that took a lot longer.
Okay.
But your style is to have unique encodings of data anyway.
Yeah.
So me knowing that it's yours, knew that, like, it wasn't going to be something that I was going to grasp right away. But the challenge is that some of the stuff was too similar and not all of it was labeled. And I think we talked about that a lot over time, over the course of discussing it. So.
Yeah, and I'll say it was definitely good to hear. Well, everything really, but I also did not, because I've been staring at it, I hadn't realized how much the red bars on the right attract attention. I'm a little ashamed because I probably should have realized that. If I so when I started visiting, and I don't do this as much as I used to or should, I would kind of towards the end step back. I think in the web design world, it was called the squint test. Mm-hmm. So you step back at least 3-4 feet and squint until it starts to get blurry, and kind of see what stands out for you. That I probably hopefully would have spotted that, but.
Or just see where your eyes end up getting pulled. Like, your eyes will get drawn to a part of the page for whatever reason.
Yeah.
They're continually drawn to the right because that's where the strongest color is, and because you have two strong horizontal lines that are pointing there.
Yeah, it's true.
So you get drawn away from your data, and well, that's data too, but that's not the data you want to emphasize.
Okay. Well, thank you.
All right. And I look forward to seeing the next iteration.
Thank you. I look forward to hearing his thoughts on the next iteration.